Palestine human rights organizations denounced that the Israeli regime uses hunger as a weapon of war in Gaza. More than 2 million Palestinians suffer from hunger due to Israel's policies. In Ecuador, authorities report multiple acts of violence following the declaration of a state of emergency. Authorities register kidnapped agents, burned vehicles, and riots in jails. And in Zambia, the death toll from cholera rose to 222 following new outbreaks in October 2023. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. More than 2 million Palestinians are suffering from hunger as a direct result of Israel's policy of depriving them of food in Gaza. Through a report, the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the occupied territories detailed that the Gazans spend days and nights without being able to consume food. The document also points out that the inhabitants depend entirely on supplies brought from outside due to the crop fields, factories, and warehouses destroyed by the Israeli occupation. Furthermore, the Israeli army only allowed a fraction of supplies to enter and is classified as a war crime, and the entity calls on the world to take urgent measures. Humanitarian organizations also denounced that at least 10 Palestinian children suffer amputations every day as a result of the constant Israeli bombardment of the Gaza Strip. The organization Save the Children highlights in a statement the recent UNICEF report where it indicates that 1,000 minors in Gaza lost one or both limbs as a result of the Israeli attacks. In this regard, they indicated that the worsening health crisis and the severe lack of medical supplies forces doctors to amputate limbs sometimes without anesthetics, painkillers, and through rapid procedures outside health facilities. Meanwhile, the 95th day of the genocide perpetrated by Israel, the occupying forces continue these Tuesday attacks against different points of the Gaza Strip. During a bi-weekly UN press briefing, representatives of the World Health Organization based in Jerusalem and Gaza offer insight into the desperate humanitarian crisis currently unfolding in the Gaza Strip as the conflict between Israel and Hamas enters its fourth month, acknowledged that the food situation is absolutely horrible.
Shrinking humanitarian space is evident. We see evacuation orders in new areas every couple of days. That means that those are areas that are unsafe, where hostilities are actively underway. We request coordination. We coordinate with the parties to the conflict that we can move safely. And those requests have consistently, for the last few days, been denied. The food situation in the north is absolutely horrific. There's almost no food available, and everybody we talk to begs for food. And the food is just there's not enough coming in, and there's not enough to feed the 2 million people who are in the Gaza Strip. And
the government of Algeria called for the convening of the United Nations Security Council in view of the danger of Israel forcing a mass exodus of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. As a non-permanent member of the organization, Algeria suggested holding a session on January 12 to address the threat of forced eviction. In recent weeks, several Israeli officials, including national security and finance officials, Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, respectively, have called for evicting the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and populating the territory with Israeli settlers. According to the United Nations, 1.9 million Gazans have been displaced inside the besieged Palestinian enclave. The United Nations Human Rights Organization called on security agencies to conduct an independent investigation into the journalists who have been killed since October 7th in the Gaza Strip. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, expressed in a statement his concern over the number of murders of news media professionals that have been perpetrated in the Gaza Strip as a result of Israeli attacks. The UN also said that the death of journalists must be investigated exhaustively to ensure compliance with international law. The press service of the Gaza Strip government reported that the number of journalists killed in the beginning of the Israeli military operations rose to 103. More than 800 organizations around the world signed a letter urging international support for South Africa's lawsuit against the State of Israel for the genocide committed against the Palestinian people. Spokespersons stated that South Africa's petition to the court marks a critical turning point that tests the global will to safeguard laws aiming to guarantee human rights and the preservation of humanity. Likewise, the coalition letter urges the signatory organizations to press their governments to immediately introduce a declaration of intervention to end the massacre in the occupied Palestinian territories. In this regard, the International Court of Justice will hold public hearings to consider the case of South Africa against Tel Aviv next January 11th and the 12th. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In Ecuador, multiple acts of violence have been recorded in different parts of the country following the declaration of a state of emergency to address the prison crisis. Local media reported that prison guards were detained and riots in different prisons, in addition to kidnapped policemen and terrorist acts registered during Monday night. In this sense, it was reported a criminal exploded a bomb in a crosswalk in Quito and set fire to vehicles in different roads. On the other hand, prisoners reportedly escaped from the Riobamba prison. During the day, images were spread on social media of military patrolling the streets in armored vehicles. The Ecuador authorities reported the escape of another inmate from the Riobamba prison. In response to this, the government increased the security deployment throughout the country. The mayor of the municipality of Riobamba, John Vinuesa, informed that Fabricio Colon, leader of the Wolves, was recently arrested by order of the prosecutor Diana Salazar. Vinuesa assured that of the 39 arrested, 12 were recaptured by police authorities. In response to this escalation, the national executive increased the presence of law enforcement agents in the most affected municipalities of the South American country. Ecuador's Ministry of Education, in the face of the prison crisis sweeping the country, suspended classes to avoid endangering the lives of students and teaching staff. The text states, the Ministry of Education informs the public that the necessary measures are being taken to ensure the safety of our educational communities as well as the continuity of learning. The document describes since January 8th the zonal coordinations in conjunction with the district directorates at the national level articulated with national police and governors to determine the possible risk of educational institutions. The mayor of the Metropolitan District of Quito, Pavel Muñoz, requested the national government to militarize the strategic installations of the city to guarantee their operation. The mayor recalls in his message that the country and Quito are going through an unprecedented security crisis. He demands all the protection of the state, the government and its security forces to safeguard the right to life. He indicated that after completing the meeting to evaluate the current situation, he decided that all agencies of the municipality of Quito increase their presence in public spaces and are ready to intervene in coordination with the government in case of incidents. He assured that he will enforce security in critical areas and public services of the city. On Monday in Mexico, the approximately 2,000 migrants of the caravan that had disbanded at the beginning of January resumed their journey in the south of the country, seeking to reach the U.S. border. The group had been part of a larger caravan of some 6,000 people that left on Christmas Eve from Tapachula, near the Guatemalan border, on the eve of a high-level meeting between Mexico and the United States. However, on January 2nd, authorities disbanded the group when the migrants voluntarily agreed to be transferred to different immigration centers to process their cases. Upon discovering that their documents did not allow them to leave the state of Chiapas, the migrants opted to regroup in Arriaga, 250 kilometers from Tapachula, and continue their journey. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro received authorities of the National Assembly as part of the act of notification of the beginning of the 2024-2025 legislative period. From the Miraflores Palace in Caracas, the legislative authorities notified the executive of the establishment of the Board of Directors and the opening of the annual period of ordinary sessions of the Assembly. In this regard, the President of Parliament, Jorge Rodriguez, stated that in the next month, of sessions, they will promote strategies aimed at the recovery of welfare and the prosperity of the population. Finally, President Maduro denounced the interventionist actions perpetrated in the past by the national right wing at the head of this public power and assured that state will not be used again against the people.
Never again. I say never again. The political power in Venezuela, be it the National Assembly, be it the Presidency of the Republic, will be used to hand over the national interest to a foreign power, by cowardly imperialists. Never again. Never again. Never again. To kick the constitutional rights of the people. Never again.
In addition, the Venezuelan head of state stated that dialogue must be defended in a courageous and persistent manner for the sake of the country's democracy.
To defend what must be defended, a concept of national coexistence, of dialogue, in a courageous and persevering manner. It was not a gesture of weakness when we called for a dialogue. It was not a gesture of surrender when we extended our hand. No, it was a gesture of conviction, not a surrender, democratic conviction, because we have been taught as revolutionaries, and revolutionary is the essence, the fundamental thing of the revolutionaries taught by Chavez in Bolivarianism, is our conviction of freedom, of democracy. We speak of another democracy, of direct democracy, true democracy.
In Peru, social and indigenous organizations demand justice 1 year after the massacre in Juliaca in the southeast of the country. Both social and political organizations are holding demonstrations to commemorate the victims of police repression in the demonstrations of December 2022 and March 2023 against the government of Dina Boluarte. The city of Juliaca commemorates 1 year since 18 civilians were killed by local police. Family members denounce that the government hides information and accuses it of genocide. They also stated that they will continue the struggle until they get justice for their murdered relatives.
Investigations of Mr. Dina Boluarte and Mr. Cholera be accelerated. Third, the forces of order that shot to kill have had the authorization of their commanders. In that sense, it must be determined who ordered the use of long-range weapons that took the lives of citizens who were not involved in the mobilizations, as in the case of Julian.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Zambia, the health ministry reported on Monday that the number of people who have died of cholera rose to 222, while the total number of cases has reached 5,462. According to the latest figures released by the authorities, the total number of cases has reached 5,462 since new outbreaks emerged in October last year. The Ministry of Health has reported the number of affected districts has reached 31, while Lusaka, the country's capital, is the most affected so far. The latest outbreak has persisted despite mitigation efforts, including the provision of clean water and chlorine to purify water sources in the most affected areas, cleaning latrines, and strengthening waste disposals.
My fellow residents, to try to observe the cholera rules. Let's use the restrooms properly. Let's wash our hands when we leave the restroom. Let's make sure that we know that maybe chlorine is expensive, but let's also use the cheapest method to make our drinking water safe.
In Japan, authorities are urging people to take extreme precautions in the face of a rain and snowstorm that has hit the country after the 7.6 magnitude earthquake on January 1st. The Noto Peninsula and its surroundings are experiencing persistent seismic activity about a week after the earthquake that has left at least 180 people dead. Meteorological authorities are urging caution as the storm could cause landslides and avalanches or lead to the collapse of already unstable houses. Caution also applies to the 28,000 people who remain displaced and the thousands of households that continue to experience power outages in freezing temperatures. In Belgium, authorities initiate plans to help homeless people over the winter on Monday, working with homeless organizations. The plans aim to provide optimal shelter for people in Brussels to get through the winter safely. The extreme cold plan allows organizations operating on the ground to open new shelters for the homeless. In total, 145 additional places with a capacity of 100 people will be provided on top of the existing shelters in Brussels. They will be open for a month, 24 hours a day, and will welcome applicants for a week while this storm, which can be extremely dangerous for people on the streets, passes. Several organizations will meet on Thursday to agree on measures and discuss increasing the number of places in existing shelters. Some shelters are already at capacity. France experienced one of its coldest days in 6 years. Normandy and the D-Day landing beaches woke up to a thin layer of snow between 3 and 5 centimeters, causing some transport disruptions and a lack of traders in markets. French authorities temporarily closed 2 highways on Tuesday as authorities scrambled to deploy salt trucks and tow vehicles after a cold snap hit the country. Transport Minister Clement Beaune argued that the National Weather Agency had not predicted snow overnight. Thermometers across the country are forecast to drop below 0 degrees Celsius on Tuesday, except in a small swath of southeastern France, according to the National Weather Bureau. In France, the French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne presented her resignation, which was accepted by the President of the country, Emmanuel Macron. Borne, 62 years old, served as Prime Minister of France since May 16, 2022, being the second woman to hold the post, after Edith Cresson. Through her account on the social media X, the President thanked the minister for her performance. In this regard, the Élysée Palace announced that the Prime Minister, together with the members of her cabinet, will continue to deal with the current problems until the appointment of a new government. Earlier, local media reported that Borne's possible successors would include Defense Ministry Chief Sébastien Lecornu, Finance Ministry Chief Bruno Le Maire, as well as Environment Minister Christophe Béchu. However, President Emmanuel Macron appointed Gabriel Attal, Minister of Public Action and Accounts, as the new Prime Minister. As soon as the appointment of Gabriel Attal as the new Prime Minister of France became official, deputies from across the political spectrum reacted in the main hall of the National Assembly.
Basically, he's a new avatar succeeding an old avatar, and Emmanuel Macron is, in a way, succeeding himself. What does the appointment mean? Given that we have seen the President of the Republic praise the departure of his Prime Minister, who clearly fulfilled the task he entrusted her, is it about getting a new majority? I don't think so. Is it to get a new line? I don't think so either.
In Spain, the mandatory use of masks in all healthcare centers has been reintroduced to equalize the protection against respiratory viruses for all citizens. The Ministry of Health informed that this Wednesday, January 10th, it will impose the use of masks by means of a declaration of coordinated actions in the face of the upturn of respiratory viruses and to legally protect the communities that have already implemented them. He also pointed out that so far only 6 territories have accepted the proposal: Catalonia, Valencian Community, Aragon, Murcia, Canary Islands, and Asturias. However, many communities have shown themselves to be totally against imposing the requirement to use the mask and are opting to recommend only its use. In Azerbaijan, an overnight fire at the maternity clinic has left 4 newborns dead, authorities said on Tuesday. Images released by Azerbaijan's Emergency Situations Ministry show rescue teams evacuating a perinatal center in Baku after a deadly fire, removing incubators from the facility. According to authorities, 4 newborns died in the fire. Prosecutors opened a criminal investigation for violation of fire safety regulations and negligence. President Ilham Aliyev promised to personally oversee the process. Prosecutor General Kamran Aliyev, quoted by local media, said the fire had broken out at 3:05 local time, but had been quickly extinguished. He added that a forthcoming investigation would determine whether the 4 children being treated in an intensive care unit died directly from the fire or from smoke inhalation. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.